Ethiopia's Deputy Prime Minister assesses endeavors underway to ramp up humanitarian delivery into Tigray via Afar. And AU chair holds talks with Putin over Russia-Ukraine crisis. Hello and thank you for joining us. You're watching Addis News Hour with the news. I'm Tabitha John. Do stay with us. Deputy Prime Minister Demeke Mekonnen has assessed endeavors underway to ramp up humanitarian delivery into Tigray via Afar region at Serdu checkpoint in the region. On the occasion, Demeke stressed the need to reinforce surveillance at the post to prevent smuggle of supplies bound to the terrorist TPLF through the corridor. Demeke appreciated the commitment of the people of Afar to facilitate safe inlet for the relief operation towards Tigray, in spite of the fact that the region is accommodating more than 1 million IDPs who fled their homes due to the aggression by the terrorist TPLF. The government has been closely working with the UN agencies and international partners to address the growing humanitarian needs inflicted by both man-made and natural disasters, reiterating unfettered access to relief aid to those in need. Deputy Prime Minister Demeke Mekonnen urged members of the federal police to exert maximum effort in the peace restoration process that Ethiopia has been embarking upon. He made this remark while bestowing recognition to members of the federal police for their outstanding service during the campaign to repulse the aggression by the TPLF. Alula Teklemariam takes you through the rest of the story.
The Ethiopian Federal Police, along with the National Defense Forces and other regional security personnel, received recognitions for their phenomenal role during the war with the TPLF fighters and OLF Shene, among others. But the peace restoration process still requires collective efforts to successfully ramp it up, said Demeke, while addressing the gathering.
In this critical time of reform and relentless effort to hold the Republic together, members of the Federal Police graciously discharged their national responsibility repulsing aggressions by both domestic and external enemies. Members of the Federal Police, along with other security forces, successfully protected the country. We should take pride in this worthwhile effort. Needless to say, there is more to be done, but still the accomplishment must be commended.
Members of the Federal Police who received appellations pledged to contribute their fair share in redoubling efforts towards the success of the ongoing law enforcement measures.
We are always committed to protect the safety and security of our people. Peace remains to be our prior agenda, so we strive to ensure that and want to express our readiness to pay any sacrifice to make that happen.
Hundreds of police officers were awarded for their outstanding service during the existential threat posed as of November 2020, when the Federal Defense Camp in Mekelle came under the onslaught of the TPLF.
Ethiopian ambassador in South Sudan, Nabil Mahdi, held a meeting with the Honorable Mayik Ayi Deng, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the Republic of South Sudan. The conversation revolved around the proposed meeting of joint border administrators of the two countries sometime next month in the Gambela region of Ethiopia. The two sides noted that the joint consultation would sustain border security, create a conducive environment for development projects, and ease the movement of people, goods, and services. Ambassador Nabil said the expected forum in Gambela will also deliberate on infrastructure development projects that aim to enhance ties between the two countries. He also expressed Ethiopia's willingness to offer training and capacity building packages to diplomats of South Sudan.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Addis News Hour with the headline.
Thank you for joining me here at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa.
Good evening to you all. Very warm welcome to ETV News. I am Grum Tariku.
Good morning, you're watching Andy's News Hour, commencing with the headlines.
Remedies for polarized politics affecting its peace and stability.
ATV English will bring you fresh stories on the diplomatic arena.
You're watching Addis News Hour. Throughout its months-long invasion of the states of Amhara and Afar, the terrorist TPLF group brutally raped girls and elderly women. Its most shocking and brazen act didn't even spare nuns. Talking to ETV, a human rights expert stressed that such acts of sexual assault on women must be exposed and be condemned by everyone. Shagao Yamatao has the following account.
I pleaded the rapists to spare me, asking them if they have sisters. Snapping that was none of my business, they even threatened to kill me.
Women who fall under these appalling conditions do everything they cannot become praised. The TPLF invaded Amhara armed with vengeful attitudes. That explains why it does these horrible things.
He broke into our home and raped her while I begged him not to. When finished with her, he did the same to me.
The terrorist TPLF raped mothers in front of their children with the intent to break their spirits. This devilish act will never be tolerated by any Ethiopian.
He pointed a gun at me and forced me to sleep with him. I did as he instructed me. I completely lost hope at that moment. Everything happened while my child looked on and wept.
Women who fell victims of sexual assault by the TPLF group during the war with the Afar and Amhara regions are suffering from post-war trauma, anxiety, worry and insomnia. Talking to ETV, Sihin Tafara, co-founder and coordinator of feminist and gender equality group, said the sexual assault mainly targeted civilians.
We rarely heard gang rape case before, but these days we hear gang rapes as common as anything you can imagine. It's a sickening experience. It's so horrible what they do. They fiddle women's sex organs and gang rape them. I can't help but flabbergasted to think any of these things made it out on me, my sister, mother, and girl.
Sihin further disclosed that the act of sexual assault on women as revenge during war must be investigated and condemned by everyone since it disturbs the social life as a whole.
I observed tragic property damage like those on schools, hospitals, and health facilities. This damaged the lives of the poor community in the area, and yet to report this. Above all, what's even disheartening is when the revenge is committed on women in the form of sexual assault. I wish it never happened.
The terrorist TPLF group violated countless girls and elderly women, some of whom are disabled, while invading Afar and Amhara states.
A former European diplomat says Egyptian and Sudanese generals are working with the TPLF against the common adversary in Addis Ababa. The former diplomat Simo Parvianen told the Ethiopian news agency that the TPLF is now desperate and finding partners in Sudan and Egypt to launch another catastrophic war against Ethiopia. Goshu Meliso has more from the Ethiopian news agency.
The terrorist TPLF continues to beat war drums threatening Tigrayan mothers to face jail terms or send their sons and daughters to the military training centers throughout the war on Tigray. In an exclusive interview with Ethiopian news agency, a former European diplomat, Simo Pekka Parvianen, told TPLF is now in desperate and forming an alliance with Sudan and Egypt to launch another catastrophic war. Simo suspects that Egyptian and Sudanese generals are working with TPLF against the common adversary in Addis Ababa.
And I suspect that the generals in Cairo, the generals in Khartoum, are working now with the TPLF against the common adversary in Addis Ababa. And that is the most kind of, they want to weaken Ethiopia like they have been doing. TPLF now is desperate and they are finding a partner in Sudan and Egypt to maybe launch something. But
according to him, Sudan is the traditional army's route for TPLF, and the terrorist group is dreaming of the Wolkayes Agade area, which is the strategic corridor to access such support from the generals in Khartoum.
Then we come to the question of Wolkayes Agade and the strategic corridor that the TPLF is dreaming of having to Sudan, because then they could continue their struggle maybe forever. That's the kind of, so it is very strategic piece of land, this Wolkayes Agade, and also there we have to be cognizant that the words matter. It is not Western Tigray. It was forcibly obtained by TPLF. There was years and decades of silence, and now the truth is start to come out. But
it is to be recalled that Ethiopia had disclosed that foreign forces fought alongside the Tigrayan fighters in November 2020.
Minister of Health Lia Tadesse received Margaret E. Kirk and her team from the Harvard School of Public Health to discuss on the work with Quest Global Network, which aims to improve health system quality and reduce maternal and newborn deaths through generating evidence. The Quest Center in Ethiopia includes Ministry of Health, Ethiopian Public Health Institute, and Addis Ababa University, together with the Quest Global Network, and is working on People's Voice Survey, MNHE cohort, and on a feasibility assessment for service delivery redesign. The two sides agreed to enhance cooperation to continue improving the health system in Ethiopia. The United Nations says 34 out of 54 countries in Africa have already put in place legislation against single-use plastic bags. However, it further says implementation of the laws remain weak in many of them. In Ethiopia, where different types of plastic bags are still in use, a group of deaf women is striving to make a change. They've been making paper bags for sale and are also using sign language to urge more people to use less damaging packaging. Kasaun Chani has more from CGT in Africa.
Orders for paper bags are increasing as more companies and individuals are convinced by these women that no plastics are the way to go. They are all deaf, but they have a loud message for all.
We want to be role model for other deaf community. So we want to show our work and sustainability to the world.
The change is slow but gradual. So far, many corporate companies have become clients. Techie paper has become popular on social media. The women record short sign language lessons to create awareness. Techie is an Amharic word loosely meaning replacing. This company is advocating for the government of Ethiopia to allocate the whole paperback industry to people with disability to enable many more to get employment. The guest says they want to attract more focus on people with hearing disabilities who lack opportunities.
We are the voice to the deaf community as well. People don't believe that deaf people can. But we are showing them that sign language has power. If we have sign language, if we have communication problems solved, the barrier removed, so people should know and understand and aware deaf community. They can, and we shout for this. We give our voice for deaf communities.
For now, about 30 women are employed here, but with a grant of $550 provided by the United States government, over the next 3 years, they can accommodate more deaf women.
With our financial support, this wonderful company will grow to include 200 additional workplaces for young deaf women. It's contributing to sustainable economic, environmental growth.
The United Nations wants that 11 million tons of plastic waste flow each year into the ocean, and this could triple by 2040. These women said they will continue proving that with support, people with disabilities can help rid the continent of plastics.
In business news, Ethiopia is endowed with extensive natural resources in different agroclimatic zones, suitable for the production of many flowers, vegetables, fruits, and herbs. Over 480 million USD has also been secured from the export of horticulture and floriculture products during this Ethiopian fiscal year. However, investors throwing money in this tough industry cautioned that horticulture leaves much to be desired, particularly in addressing policy issues to generate more revenue. Take a look at the story.
Ethiopia's vast land, favorable climate, water, and land resources combine to make it an incredible hub for horticulture and floriculture investment. In this regard, despite the global warming and other problems across the country, Ethiopia has secured over $400 million from the export of horticulture and floriculture products in this Ethiopian fiscal year. However, business persons in the field stated that a lot to be done to generate more revenue from the sector.
For this sector is really, it was very fast growing sector, but still we have to work a lot to take advantage of our potential, natural potentials, like the soil, like the water, like the labor I mentioned, proximity to Europe or Middle East. All this is advantage for Ethiopia.
According to Tsagai, Ethiopia needs to take good lessons from Kenya to generate more revenue from the horticulture sector by increasing productivity.
These days, Kenya is earning more than $1 billion from the export of horticulture and floriculture. Ethiopia, we have the potential, which Kenya doesn't have. When we say the potential, the soil, that climate, the water, abundant water in Ethiopia, the labor, easily trained labor, all these together have advantage over Kenya.
Tsagai underlined challenges related with land availability, policy issues are some of the limitations that facing the horticulture and floriculture sector across the country.
Our problem is just our bureaucratic, administrative, just to say some of them. Land availability is sometimes a question. If you wanted to expand, land is not ready to just give automatically to the developer. But our land policy is different than the land policy in Kenya. In Kenya, you buy land. That is not the policy in Ethiopia, which I don't support also. But the government should have a land for the development of each sector. If you wanted to grow coffee, the government should avail land for coffee. When I wanted to grow flowers or expand flowers, the government should prepare and give. But our advantage on fruit and the vegetable, comparing with other African countries, is not because of the incentive. It is, the incentive is, I think, maybe enough comparing to other countries. Still, the land issue is the big problem for Ethiopian investors.
According to the information obtained from Ethiopian Horticulture Producers Exporters Association, Netherlands, Germany, Far East countries, among others, are the leading buyers of Ethiopian horticulture and floriculture products.
And finally, African Union Chairperson Macky Sall has weighed in on the impact of sanctions against Russia, especially on the supply of essential foodstuffs to Africa. Sall, who is also the Senegalese president, raised this concern during a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in the southwestern Russian city of Sochi. Binyam Alemayo has more from the CGTN.
African countries are increasingly being affected by the economic repercussions of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which has pushed up prices for cereals and fuel. Russia has urged the West to lift sanctions imposed on it over its military action in Ukraine so that essential supply of grain can start flowing freely to global markets. The African Union chairperson agrees, saying that sanctions have a ripple effect on African countries.
I spoke to the European Council on Tuesday and I told them, yes, there is war, the crisis, but there are also sanctions. We should work together on resolving these two problems and instead of that, make sure that everything concerning food grain supplies is outside the sanctions.
In his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in the city of Sochi, Macky Sall, who is also the Senegalese president, urged him to take into account the suffering being witnessed in African countries as a result of the conflict.
You have seen the different votes at the United Nations. The position of Africa, despite enormous pressure, the majority of African countries have avoided condemning this situation. And if you also take Asia, the Middle East and also Latin America, you see that a good part of humanity, which in reality is very attentive to what is happening, and me, in the name of all hopes, that I have come to see you, to ask you to be aware that our countries, even far from the theater of Ukrainian conflict, are the victims of this economic crisis.
Ukraine and the West have accused Russia of blocking ports to help exports, threatening global food security. Moscow has denied this, expressing its desires to develop ties with Africa.
Our country has always been on the side of Africa, has always supported Africa in its battle against colonialism. We think that with Africa in general and its individual nations, we traditionally have very good relations. I would even call them friendly relations without exaggeration. Africa as a whole has a huge potential, and based on that, we will continue to develop our relationships with Africa and its individual nations.
Sall called for the lifting of restrictions that hinder the supply of Russia's grain crops and fertilizers.
And now here's the weather updates for tomorrow.